Hello there. A CNN team's reporting trip to Myanmar has raised a firestorm of criticism. This trip, undertaken by CNN chief international correspondent Clarissa Ward and her team and another newsroom, was at a country which we all know has undergone a military coup and where civilians are being targeted, they're being killed, rounded up, tortured by the military junta there. Ward was there at the invitation of the military, and after the trip, 11 people she spoke to were arrested. This is the basic background of the case, and it has led to widespread condemnation of not just the team, but the practice really of what is known as parachute journalism. What is this? Why is it so problematic? To talk about it, we have with us Sanne Breimer. She's a journalist and press critic, someone who works for inclusive journalism, joining us from Bali. We also have Alan Soon, who's a co-founder of Splice Media and a media commentator based out of Singapore. Both of them co-wrote a petition online as well, asking for greater transparency from the CNN team. So, Sanne, thanks so much for joining us. I'll come first to you. For those who are just tuning in to this issue, how do you look at it? How do you frame it, especially given the fact that you and Alan co-wrote this petition?
Yeah, well, I think the whole situation around Clarissa Ward going to Myanmar is part of a bigger problem, as you were mentioning already, which is called parachute journalism. So I think what happened with her going there as a correspondent for CNN just evolved in a sort of example of what parachute journalism is and what actually can go wrong when you do something like that. And I mean, can go wrong in a sense that it was obviously clear that people got arrested after they talked to her. So CNN with the presence of the journalists there brought people in direct danger. But it also, the reporting also doesn't bring so much news in comparison to what we already knew from the last few months reported by local journalists in Myanmar. So I think those two things are, in this particular case, to me, most interesting.
Before I go to Alan, could you explain a little bit about what you want from the petition? It has been circulated widely, and we're playing it up on the screen as well.
Yeah, so I reached out to Alan to write this together because I felt, I mean, Twitter is a platform where a lot of people discussed this already when people found out that Clarissa Ward went to Myanmar. And I always feel like Twitter is great because a lot of journalists are active there, a lot of politicians and other experts are active there. But it's also kind of this bubble of media people who discuss topics with each other. And I felt it's sometimes good also to make a statement that reaches outside of the Twitter bubble. So to create a statement like this, Alan and me thought if we do a petition like this and let it spread around the world, actually, what is happening now, then we can also bring journalists together, media colleagues together, and make a strong statement in saying, like, we should not do this anymore, this parachute journalism, and it's good to bring some self-reflection also to our profession and ask some critical questions to ourselves about this.
Yes, it's pretty clear to all of us in the profession that journalism has a lot of in-house cleaning to do, and this is a good point at which to talk about it. Alan, what about Clarissa Ward's own defense, saying that much of the criticism of her actions has come from white men? I mean, what would you say to that? How would you look at her defense?
Well, I don't know how to read into what she said there, because I really don't think that this is something that that white academic men have been criticizing. I think the criticism has really come out of both, foreign as well as local journalists, men and women. This is something that everyone in the media industry seems to have a point of view on, and I think that's important to keep in mind. These criticisms are not directed at her per se. It is directed at the processes in which CNN has conducted itself leading up to this report. So one, we feel that there's no transparency around how this trip was arranged. There's no transparency around what kinds of deals may have happened between CNN and the government there, and also the use of a renowned or disrenowned lobbyist as well is something that we're concerned about as well. I think there needs to be transparency on all fronts as to how this trip came about. We believe that we should be applying the same rules of transparency that we expect of the subjects that we cover in media.
Got it. I mean, Alan, there's a quote of yours to Vice that we just played up. The foreign correspondent model is an old construct, you said, and that's not where the world is today. Can you explain this? Let me put it this way. We got into reporting, many of us, because we wanted to travel to foreign lands. It doesn't matter where we're from. It's always great to report somewhere. And just in India, there's a lot of parachute reporting as well. People from India, journalists from New Delhi going to different parts of India, different states of India. So it's a widespread issue. And part of the romance of journalism is about traveling to different places and discovering new people. But so why then is the foreign correspondent an old construct?
Yeah, I like that you're calling this out, because it's something that I grew up with. The romance of journalism, as you rightly described, has a lot to do with going to places that people have not thought about or heard about or read about, and finding stories and telling them. I grew up with National Geographic as part of the selection of items on my bookshelf. I also grew up with Tintin, and he was an inspiration for me for a long time. I also grew up with a lot of great names in the broadcast industry, which led me to being a broadcast producer myself for many years. This is something that I think still holds a lot of merit in a lot of our minds. We feel that as journalists, we need to go to somewhere different so that we can tell a story that the locals could not figure out or tell to a wider world. Some of this is true, but I think also that in a time of great access to the internet, for example, you have more voices that are coming out now on Twitter and on Facebook and on YouTube and on Instagram that you could lean on. For us to assume that we could walk into any situation and represent the interests of that local community, I think is something that's a very archaic concept of what reporting is. The goal of journalism, I think modern journalism, needs to be that it reflects the community that it represents. For you to come across as someone credible, and for you to be in a position of explaining what's going on in a specific community, you have to come from the community, and you have to be cognizant of the sensitivities of that community. To assume that me as a foreigner can come in and tell that story better than a local can is smacks of arrogance.
Got it. Sanna, what would you say specifically about? I'm talking about CNN, but really there are so many newsrooms around the world that have done this. On the one hand, they say the fact that a foreign organization or a news organization representing the United States going to another country itself is a big act of putting the spotlight on the country. And on the other hand, you have criticisms that say that the visit itself legitimized the military junta in Myanmar. So how do you weigh the balance, and where do you fall on this, the two sides pulling each other?
Yeah, I think that's the core question now for journalism to start organizing discussions about for all the conferences that we're going to hopefully meet each other again soon. But I watched the Clarissa Ward report of this morning, that was published, her latest. I mean, the big report she was talking about. And what I see in that report is that it obviously shows the courage of the Myanmar people, because people walk up to her, risking being arrested. You really see the courage of the people, that they are done with the situation in the country. So to me, the report has a very clear emotional message. And I think that can be definitely very valuable, because even though I mean, we know maybe the situation in Myanmar a little bit more because we're staying in Asia at the moment. But if you're all the way in the United States or in Europe, then Myanmar probably is, I mean, surely is much more far away in a lot of respects. So to make this a human story by interviewing the people of Myanmar and giving them a voice, I think there is definitely value in that. But you need to be weighing all these different things together. And to me, that's actually the only value we got out of this. And I think it's very important. The main doubt I have with this whole situation is also that she interviews, for example, the military junta, but by giving them such a clear voice on television and asking them certain questions, where I think by asking them the questions you already know that you're never going to get a truthful answer, to me that's a little bit naive. To me that shows a kind of this Western naivety of not knowing exactly the situation in the country, and is as if you as a white person traveling there and asking the military regime tough questions, then suddenly they will stop with what they're doing. You know, I don't think it works like this. I'm sure she also doesn't think it works like that. But this is also part of that emotional reporting that they apply also in the interviews with the military regime. You know, she mentions names of protesters who died. What are you going to tell to their father? What are you going to tell to their mother? And I think, yeah, you're talking to a military person who the people of Myanmar, they don't even call them humans anymore, you know, like, so I think you need to be very aware of the fact that you fly in doing that, you fly out, but you can't oversee the consequences happening in the country when you leave. And that's just, to me, too big a risk you bring to the country. And also, I think for the local journalism that's working very hard there already. I mean, we now maybe think, oh, Clarissa is safe back in the United States, but we really don't know what the consequences are of her visit. You know, that's just something that we need to be very careful with.
Got it. I'm going to come for a last couple of round of questions. And I also want to talk about whether the criticism of her has been gendered in any way, just to get that out, get that into the picture. But Alan, can we spare a moment for what's happening in Myanmar itself and what's happening with journalism in Myanmar? We at Boom, we operate a fact-checking team there, and it's been very, very difficult. And you've, at Splice Media, you've helped Frontier Myanmar and other newsrooms there. So what do you know about what it's like to be a journalist there right now?
I am probably the least qualified person to comment on that one, you know, just because I don't live under the circumstances in which a lot of these journalists do right now. A lot of them have gone into hiding. A lot of them have gone into remote reporting just because that's the only way to survive, right? None of them obviously want to go to prison or to be arrested for the work that they do. They've gone into hiding. The work that they do is remarkable considering the kind of scrutiny and risk that they're taking. And this is why Sanne and I felt so strongly about what CNN has been doing here. To walk into a situation 2 months after a coup and assuming that you could shed light to something that, you know, local journalists have put their lives on the line for, to report to, for the wider world.
Yes. And Sana, back to that question about Clarissa Ward criticism. Some people say, she says it's because, the criticism is coming from white men. There are other people who say perhaps this criticism is gendered. You yourself said that this is not about her, but the practice really of the team, and not just CNN, but other teams as well. So, which side would you come down on that question?
Yeah, well, to me, that's a very interesting topic, because my expertise actually is media diversity and inclusion. I, as a white journalist, have experienced in my career a lot of confrontation with my own blind spots and prejudices if it's about racism and media diversity. And I, to be honest, see this mechanism is really similar to how white people in general respond when they are being accused of racism, for example. So it's a kind of a defense mechanism that we as white people, I dare to say that because hey, I'm white myself, we very easily point out to others that something is wrong, or we have this defense mechanism, being afraid of being accused of something, instead of asking ourselves, hey, could there be any truth in the criticism that I receive at this moment, and how could I do things differently? And that's really such a crucial phase that I so often miss in the responses. And I think this is really an issue also of white Western, at least Western journalists, because you both agreed that this parachute journalism, this issue has been talked about quite a lot already. But I don't think, to be honest, that in the newsrooms in Europe and the US, it's so much discussed, because there still is this attitude of, hey, we're ahead of the rest of the world, and it makes total sense for us to send a white person there to bring clearance. They don't even know, I think, that a lot of people don't even know that Myanmar has excellent independent journalism. And that, to me, is, I think, the biggest reason for our petition also to make this statement, like, look a little bit further than your own newsroom, and especially than your own Western bubble. So, yeah, I would say please do some self-reflection and also look at it in a bigger scope of systemic racism, because in the end of the day, it is really all connected to a culture of whiteness that we really need to discuss more often. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, what you said also brings to me echoes of the idea that journalism practiced in worlds or in countries where the press is fully free is different from how journalism is practiced in countries where the press is categorized as partly free or not free at all, depending on the Freedom House rankings, for example. That is something we can continue to talk about, but I want to quickly ask you a couple of questions. Alan, what is your best hope for this petition?
Well, what we want to do is to get to a level of transparency here. I think it's important for us as a media industry to understand what were the terms of negotiation, what were the terms that were discussed for this trip, and also to derive lessons from this. I think it's really important for us to look long and hard and ask ourselves, does parachute journalism like this work? Is this really meant to be the way we tell stories in a modern digital age? I think what we want to get out of this is to trigger this discussion, and I'm really heartened to see the conversations that have come out of this, especially on Twitter, and to be a part of this conversation right now with you.
Yes, indeed. Sanne, what about from your perspective? I mean, it's this. You both have written the petition, and Alan has said that you want greater transparency. But beyond the petition, what do you hope? Do you believe that now's the time when, because of this one incident or this one, reporting, piece of reporting, that we will actually continue to have this conversation, or do you think this is going to die down?
Well, it's probably going to die down. if we don't, let's say, if the aim is just to keep talking about it, it will die down. What we need is really change something in how to do things differently. And also, I think that's important too, show examples of how it can be done differently. But because there are a lot of examples that are doing things already differently. I saw a week ago, it's published 1st of April, I think, a 10-minute video of Ross Atkins for the BBC. They made an analysis of the situation in Myanmar. And I found it so strong because he was in the studio. I mean, he didn't go to Myanmar, but just by collecting all the different footage and events happening from day one of the coup till now, and actually repeating every minute saying, and the international community didn't do anything, and the international community didn't do anything, and still the international community said they're going to act, but they're still not doing anything. I think this is already a great example of how you can be so valuable as a big media organization, editing something so strong with a more kind of constructive voice of the journalists. I think, this is just one example, and it's never a good idea to, you can better watch it than hearing me explain what he did. But I mean, I think we should share this kind of examples with each other because there are many, many also media startups who found creative ways of doing journalism in new ways. And this is just, parachute journalism is over, this is old journalism, and we need to bring it to the future.
Right. I think we should just also mention that the Southeast Globe was also part of this reporting visit, and they're going to be making a statement. They've invited people for a public discussion, which is an encouraging first step. Any last word on that, Alan?
No, I would really applaud the Globe for doing this, because I think what they've realized is that they themselves, by virtue of being on this trip, are somewhat complicit in this process of excess, in a process which involved working with a lobbyist of horrible reputation, I would say. And allowing themselves to walk into a situation like this. But I think what's remarkable is that they see the outcry in the community and understand that they too have a responsibility to come forward and explain how all this came together, and with that learn the lessons that need to be learned from something as big as this.
Well, here's hoping this whole incident leads to more self-awareness and introspection among us. All of us have to do it. And let's hope this is a good start. Thanks so much, both of you, for talking to us on Media Buddhi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.